And yeah, I struggle, even though I understand that, yeah, from a professional point of view, we are better. We got players with experience that we haven't seen in Lazio for a very, very long time. But overall, and coming back to where we started, I have a hard time seeing that we are better than last year.
With regards to depth, and where I was going with is depth, that we've managed to be organized because of it. We have so many players we don't even think of that come to mind, that should players get injured, we have a guy like, I'm not saying he's world class in the sense of Scaloni, but the guy is so versatile, and so many times we'll have injuries in certain spots, and we have to rely on a guy like that. And we have that depth this year, whereas opposed to maybe last year we didn't. And not to mention, we have unused players that are collecting dust, and we started to discuss on that, and there's a lot of forgotten players. I couldn't understand the addition of Stankovicius, but Stendardo is still there. We have these options. Cavanda is still there, should anything happen to Conco. I know Rhea's maybe not very fond of him after the debacle with Juventus last year, and he hasn't really featured much since. But I think a guy like Alvaro Gonzalez has really proved his worth for the team as a workhorse, and he's constantly going box to box, and what Cathal says Napoli brings to the table. So I guess I have to disagree. I think a lot more we can rely on coming off the bench. Schooley's always available, and somehow he still manages to score, even though I think his quality is not of the best. I mean, we were talking about a guy who was once a Serie B striker for Modena or Verona, and now he's our bomber in Europe. He can't stop scoring when it comes to European games. So I think losing guys like Bresciano and dead weights that were taking up spots on the bench, I think we've definitely improved in a depth factor. We have a lot of guys we can rely on to come off the bench, and Rocky hasn't really been utilized. He's come off the bench. He's featured in a handful of minutes in Serie A, not to mention a few European games. And he's still up to his usual self. He's scoring goals, as we've seen with his 100 goals. So I have to definitely think we're going in the right direction. And it's these type of depth players that'll help us come towards the end of the season when everybody else is getting tired and injuries are starting to set us back.
But I mean, yeah, go on.
Sorry, go on, Cash.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, in a sense, you can also say that it is, these players that you do mention, if we look at Zauri and if we look at Stankovicius, they actually cost us quite a few points. So, yeah, we have got players to put out there, and we have players that can actually, fill a spot. But are they good enough? I don't think they are. There are lots of players on our bench. I mean, look at Lorik Chana, for example. How well has he been performing? He was supposed to somehow come in and take Brocky's spot and Phillies. So far, has he been successful? We've got Mauri injured now. Who have we got that we can put on that can actually create chances for others, that can be somehow the creative mastermind on the midfield? I think we still lack what we need, which is a few better players on the bench if we want to speak of a Lazio that has a greater depth.
I agree about that, but see, there's a few things I'd be thinking here. Injuries, for one's a crucial point, because I can understand why home form is important and how picking up points away is important and all that, but we don't really have a fortress of a stadium at the minute, because it's not really our own stadium. It's too big of a stadium to really make it an intimidating atmosphere for the opposition. So I think naturally we lose something at home anyway to, say, a Palermo or even a Sampdoria when they went on their unbeaten home runs not so long ago. So I think we lack something there, but to come through an injury crisis like we have in the last few weeks, I think, because without Mauri, I don't think we're anywhere near the same team. We're still picking up points, and last season we didn't have the same concerns with injuries that we did now. And I think one thing that's very crucial to look at is, I was focusing a lot on the Catania game from an analytical perspective, and the reason was simple. We put 4 past them at the end of the season last year when we weren't really picking up points. And the 4 goals, if I remember, it came from Hernandez, Murray, Zarate and Flockery. And they were all 4 men in attack, and they put in a stellar performance and really showed what that Lazio was capable of. And then we play against pretty much the same team this season, and we struggle, and we let them come into the game, we let them pick up a point. And that's where I can see where Cash is coming from. But when you think that we've been picking up 3 points in the league around that Catania game, and that we've been killing off other minnows like we didn't do in the previous season, and when you also consider in the previous season that we went to Catania, which I know was an intimidating place to go, but we didn't really show that we could defeat them in those games. Then we can see that some of the problems we've had last season are being addressed, even if we are still worried that we don't have the quality of players that we did last season. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm not sure we do have ultimately the quality, but we still have more than enough numbers, more than enough depth, and now character to take us on to the next level. And you only have to go back to that Udinese game last season to know that character was the one big thing we were seriously missing.
Definitely. And when you speak of intimidating atmosphere, Cash, you can touch on this. Would you agree with that statement that maybe the Stadio Olimpico isn't as intimidating as some might think it is from watching from home?
Well, the thing is that, we barely get anything more than a curva that is full if it's not one of these larger games, and I think that is a problem. I mean, traveling to, for example, Palermo, as Cathal said, everyone knows how hard it is because it's an away game in an arena that will be boiling, and you have that pressure on actually going there and trying to do something. The issue of having more than a half-empty stadium, I think, is growing now, where you really need to win your games at home, and then if you can do what we've been doing so far on the road, which is picking up points that we usually struggle doing, for example, Cagliari or Bologna, then we would be a few points ahead of Udinese and Milan, and then we could have been speaking of a Lazio that has improved. So yeah, I do agree that is becoming, I think, a larger and larger issue now that it's the Serie A is so tight, and you really need to have that support at home. You need to have that pressure on your opponents. That now we're traveling away and facing a team where it's going to be hard to actually get something and to come back with.
And I definitely agree that we are missing Stefano Mauri to a certain extent. I've never been a huge fan, but he does create so much for us. So that would be something we should touch on closer to January, on bringing in a vice Mauri, because as Paolo mentioned earlier on in his show, that we were pretty much going to have to say goodbye to Stefano Mauri for the remainder of the season as he went under the knife in Germany last week. In terms of intimidating atmospheres, and you want to talk about away form, there's nothing more stellar than our away form, I believe, this year. And I've thoroughly impressed, and it's exceeded my expectations for how well we've gone into other stadiums and played without almost that loose sort of character where we can do anything we want in an away match. Aside from maybe the game against Sporting Lisbon, where maybe that was an intimidating atmosphere that we just couldn't cope with at the point, and not to mention there was a lot of refereeing errors and blunders that really changed that game. But aside from that, you want to talk about the most intimidating atmosphere, I think, is at the Stadio San Paolo, which is where we're headed coming next Saturday. So now would be a perfect time to touch on a team, Napoli, who's wounded, coming off 2 straight losses, very fresh though, since their last match was in the Champions League over 2 weeks ago against Bayern Munich, where they almost grabbed a point towards the end of that one. And we want to talk about a game of the season last year was this fixture in Napoli, as Eddie Maria made his return to the Stadio San Paolo in a 7-goal thriller. And I remember cursing that one as one of the main games that forced us not to get that all-elusive Champions League spot. So, Cathal, where do you see us next Saturday at the San Paolo? Will it be a similar affair, or will that character bring us forward again like it has already on the road?
I don't think it'll be a similar affair, for the simple reason being that I don't think there's been too many defining games in the past that have been as defining as that game was last season. I mean, that was just an absolute roller coaster in a game we should have won about 10 times over before we let ourselves, really throw the game away, or even the referee don't want to go down that route. So I guess where there may be a similarity with this game is that there are many variables again. But what I think is crucial about Napoli, and I think a sort of a point that needs to be made, is they've been able to handle 2 or 3 competitions quite well under Mazzari, and they've got a decent chance of progressing in the Champions League. So even though their form of late has been a bit worrying, I don't think they're in such a bad shape as critics are suggesting, and we might be the ones to get the backlash now. What I think's been key about Napoli this season is I think they're targeting the big teams, and I think they're treating them as 6-pointers and really trying to hurt the big teams and throw caution to the wind a bit against the minnows and not be too worried if they lose points there. But there's they're really focusing on getting this, I think, this big game character that we really need. So I think we're going to get a very motivated team, because I think they're going to treat us as one of the big teams, because they know that we have the potential to hurt them this season and to finish above them this season, and really, really ruin their season. We have that potential this year, and we know that. So I think we're going to get a very determined Napoli side, and that's where I'd be worried. I'd be worried about how they're going to handle that pressure. Like you said, that it's not exactly the easiest stadium to go to, and yeah, where I'd be more confident of getting a result this year than last year. I don't really have too much optimism about getting points there, really.
Well, that's a pretty big dark statement there for you, Caxi, because I can't.
I mean, it's just looking at patterns and thinking about how Napoli will come into the game. I think it's going to take one hell of a performance to pick up even a point. But I know we can do it, but I just think the ball is in their court at the minute with this one.
Well, if there's any football justice to anything from last year, we are owed 3 points, might I add, or at least a point going into this one in the São Paulo. And it was one of those games that you needed a defibrillator after to pump your heart, because that was just a crazy game last year with Cavani obviously getting the final touch on the ball that put the 3 points in the Neapolitans' hands. And this is also talking about a time that we had a different goalie, and this is what we touched on. Maybe Marchetti brings that stability, because Muslera could have easily been at fault for some of those goals that happened in that 7-goal thriller. But, I mean, this is a team, I'm talking about Napoli, a team that I despise pretty much on the same level as the big clubs. And they are, rightfully so, a big club again now playing in the Champions League. And this is a game that we need to take something from if we intend to finish in the top 3, which is one of our main targets, which is what everybody's saying is Champions League football next year. And we're going up against a Napoli side that, like you said, are giant killers. They want to take on the big guns, and they don't give a about the small teams, as we've seen them losing to teams like Catania and Chievo this year. And you know what, even Catania has an argument that they are a top 10 team this year, in fact even pushing for European soccer with Montella as their coach. Cash, how do you view this going into São Paulo? And you know about intimidating atmospheres, and how will we grab anything from this game?
I think that you were actually spot on a bit earlier when you spoke about our away form. I think that away games fit Eddie Rea's tactics and his game plan, and the way that he prepares the guys for games perfectly. I think he's a lot more comfortable, and the whole team seems to be a lot more comfortable about traveling and playing places where we are not expected to somehow dominate the game, to have the possession, to be the team that is constantly trying to push back the opponents, but rather sit back and try to hit the other teams on a counter, or at least let them somehow control the pace of the game and so on. And I think Napoli could be either a game that somehow is perfect for us, or it's going to be a game that somehow shows that we are not really up there with the greatest teams of Serie A yet. As you just mentioned, I mean, Napoli has had against the big teams a perfect season so far. They beat Inter with I think it was 3-0. They beat Milan at home, and have had some really good games. But on the other hand, they've also had weaker performances, such as they lost to Parma at home, as an example. And I think this can very much be a game that shows us exactly if we are better than last year, and if we are going to actually push for the Champions League spots this year. Because a win against Napoli, or even a draw, would be a quite large step forward for us. We have Juventus the week after, which is also going to be another one of those games that will show very much what Lazio today actually stands for, how far we can come. It's after a long break, and they've actually had a longer break than we will have, and it's going to be interesting to see how many of our players are going to be back, are going to be fit. How is Ray going to play the midfield, for example, if Matuzalem is back? Hopefully Hernanes will come back even happier, since he scored his first goal for Brazil.
Yes.
I think it was yesterday. Klose hasn't been playing against Ukraine, so we should have some players that are actually rested and really prepared to travel down to Sao Paulo and bring home a result that shows that Lazio this year is a team that everyone has to treat as one of the bigger teams, as one of the large teams in Italy.
And I wanted to touch on, it's a very similar fixture schedule where last year we had a set of really easy games, and I think that was another reason that I forgot to mention why I felt that Lazio was a lot, if not the same or stronger in first place at the same point in this year. Let us not forget, we are in first place right now, 21 points joint shared with Udinese, who have become our arch nemesis in terms of taking anything away from us. And I don't see how we're constant in battle with them. They have a lot of hardworking midfielders, and I guess that's a conversation for another day on our arch rivals in Udinese. But it was the same fixture schedule last year where we had a stretch of easy games, and then we got two big ones, which was the Inter back-to-back with Juventus, and somehow Juventus is squished in again with us with Napoli and Juventus. Exactly what you said, Cash. It's almost so exciting to go into a game like Napoli because you want to see where Lazio is, but it's also very, it puts a little bit of fear in you because should Napoli get the strong support of the Sao Paulo and throw us a beating, then all of a sudden we have to take a step back again like we've done today and then analyze really how good are we and are we worthy of the top three spots. And I think that's my main fear, but I'm also so excited based on our away form, and I really feel that we have what it takes to take something away, and I think we're a little bit owed something. I'm going along those lines where I think we're owed something going into Napoli and taking on a team that I despise, with especially being here in Canada. There's a lot of part-time Napoli fans around here that have been hiding in the closet and all of a sudden have come out over the last few years, and it's something that I just very much detest. I guess from that point of view, I have a little bit of extra that I wanna give to their own blue team.
Well, for me, on the are we better argument, the way I would leave that is actually at the end of the season, if we come in the top four, I'm not talking about top three because the team is much clearer than us last season, way ahead, but the upper position, and I don't think this argument will be had at the end of the season. But for Napoli, I think it's the exact same point. If we get anything from the game, I think we can really conclude that we're on the right track and that maybe the top three isn't beyond us. Because I'll tell you this, Michael, and I'll say very briefly, I'm not the most optimistic of people in terms of results because I enjoy supporting the team, and that's what I'm here to do. So I don't get overly optimistic about the results. But after that derby win, I really did feel like we have the chance to achieve something really, really big. And Scudetto thoughts were going through my head, and I think that's probably a bit beyond us. But why not aim for that? I don't see any reason why we can't aim for that, considering that everyone has the same predicaments as us. So I'm in a good place this season, so I am hopeful we're going to get something from that. But I just think this one individual game could be a setback. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful we are going to bounce back from this international break, and all those who come back are going to come back fit, healthy, and wanting victories in 3 points.
Setback, speriamo di no. I hope not. Cash, I want to thank you as well for joining us today, and thank your brother-in-law again, a fellow Canadian of mine, for putting together such a wonderful video as well. And as Cathal mentioned, the magic of the derby, the magic of that derby, that last-minute closer goal gives me so much hope going forward. So I want to try to be a little bit more optimistic than I usually am, because I usually take Cathal's route and kind of go in with fear to games even against a Catania or a Cesena for that argument.
I think if I can just say something about the Napoli game, just to conclude this, is that it's last time we played them in Sao Paulo was just the craziest of games. But if we look at the table today, we see that a win against Napoli or even a draw would put us in a brilliant position, compared to them. They will be challenging us for the top spot. So I think going down there and actually getting a result, it doesn't need to be a win. A draw is more than enough for this one, I think, because it will show that we are there and we want to stay at the top. And I think that what Edirea has done this year, and what I can see, is that the team feels a lot more like a team than it has done earlier, and that is, I think the strongest part of Lazio this year. The guys actually seem to care about the team, about each other, about getting the results, about getting what they are there to get. And the issue where Rea was going to leave the team, it somehow turned out very positive for everyone involved at this point, because the fans, a little bit more than before, have come together, and the atmosphere when we were down in Rome was just a little bit more positive than it's usually been. And then getting that derby win just, boosted everything a bit more. And I think Napoli should be a little bit worried. They haven't been in the best of forms recently, and if they don't get a win against us, well, they're already 7 points. We're already 7 points ahead of them. So it's a very important game, even though I think that a series does not get all decided over this game, but I think it's a very, very important game for us.
I agree. As a direct competitor for any spots in Europe, like they will be, Napoli, a win puts us 10 points and a commanding lead over them, which is huge going into the transfer window and our official Christmas break, which we'll have. And in terms of on a home front, I want to take this opportunity as well to let any Canadian listeners know to get in touch with me, to get on our mailing list for Lazio future games, and we will be watching it as a group, just like a lot of everybody, the big family from Indonesia, for example, watches it all over the world, and there's different little contingencies where they continue to support, and some of us aren't as lucky as Cash, for example, to go to see these big ones. When is your next one, by the way, Cash? When are you going to go see another one?
We just spoke about it, me and my brother-in-law, because somehow the bug bites him. He wants to do this all the time now. He's just asking me, when can we go? We even wanted to book a flight down and watch Bologna away, which was a little bit too much for me, the week after the derby. But I don't know. I think definitely the next derby we're going down there. But I would like to go down and see maybe Inter at home, and then end everything off with a Milan game just before the end of the season, hopefully, to thank the guys for a brilliant season and so on. So we'll see. I'll let you know, Michael.
Well, Santa Claus definitely pays his visits to Sweden more often than he does to the rest of the world, right? Poor Cathal's still waiting to get in there. I hope to see all of you one day. That's the dream, I think, for me, is to see all of us together from all over the world actually at a game, as important as the derby, right? For sure. Cathal, as always, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for being a part, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you for having me on this again. It's always a pleasure and a privilege.
And Cash, we'll hope to have you back sooner rather than later. This has been an utmost pleasure as well. Thank you very much.
I hope so too, Michael. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Yeah? Thank you very much.
Yeah, and salute to all my friends from Sweden that I had the privilege of meeting last time I was out there as well.
I definitely will.
We'll see you after Napoli, everybody. Hopefully 3 points and remaining in first place like we rightfully should. I'm Michael Di Mascio. This has been North Curve. We'll see you after Napoli.